Think about it, really think about it. All around the world, thousands of kilometers apart, on different continents, in different cultures, built in different eras, there are structures. But they all share one secret. They all have the same shape. Each one is designed with perfect geometry, like the circuit paths of a microchip, in the form of a star. Official history tells you these structures were built for defense. But have you ever asked this question? Why does a fortress need to be this perfect? Why would a defensive wall need fractal geometry, so precise it could only be drawn with the most advanced computer software today? Keep watching this video, because the answer will take you somewhere very different from what you expected. Let's begin. Star forts appear at hundreds of locations stretching from Europe to the Americas, from Japan to the Middle East. Palmanova, Portange, Fort Jefferson, the surroundings of Marengo, Naarden. The list goes on. Official archaeology and history date these structures to the 16th and 17th centuries, claiming they represent a new defensive architecture developed against cannon fire. That sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Artillery advanced, tall straight walls became useless, so they built lower, angled ones instead. If we accepted that explanation and closed the book, this video would end right here. But we're not closing it, because some things don't fit inside that explanation. Let's go a little deeper. Let's start with the geometry. When you see aerial footage of these structures for the first time, what comes to mind? Most people say the same thing: a circuit board, a frequency pattern. You know the experiments scientists run with cymatics. When specific sound frequencies are applied to sand, the patterns that emerge? They almost perfectly mirror the geometry of star forts. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the designers of these structures had already discovered frequency, energy, and vibration long before what we call modern science. When you consider the possibility that these structures weren't built merely for defense, but were instead technological devices, collecting, directing, or distributing an energy flow both above and below the ground, that flawless geometry suddenly starts to make sense. Now let's talk about construction. Official history says these structures were built under the conditions of the era with primitive tools. But when you look at the sheer scale of these structures, the precision of their walls, the perfect alignment of millions of tons of stone, that explanation starts to fall short. How did people living centuries ago achieve geometric precision that today would only be possible with laser measurement technology? And why does that same precision appear at the same standard in communities thousands of kilometers apart, with no claimed means of communication? This question, one that Tartaria researchers have been asking for a long time, takes on an even heavier meaning when it comes to star forts. If a globally advanced civilization once ruled this world and was erased from history by a reset event, these structures could be the physical remains of that civilization. Massive monuments still standing, never destroyed, often described as neglected but solid, and perhaps much more than that. And right at this point, another question arises. If these structures were built purely for defense, why are so many of them located right in the center of cities, near water sources, or in geographically significant positions? Energy researchers and alternative historians argue these locations are no coincidence. Across the surface of the Earth, there are lines known as ley lines, lines that follow the planet's natural electromagnetic flow. Along these lines, you find the world's most mysterious structures: Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, Machu Picchu. And yes, many star forts are positioned directly on these lines or at their exact intersection points. If these structures were designed to use these energy lines as a kind of amplifier or distribution node, then the perfection of the geometry wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. The angles, the symmetry, the fractal structure all had to be exact for the energy flow to be properly directed. Do you remember Tesla? In the early 20th century, Nikola Tesla was building a system that promised to deliver free, wireless energy to all of humanity. Wardenclyffe Tower. He planned to harness the Earth's electromagnetic frequencies and transmit energy through the atmosphere to every corner of the world. And that project was shut down by the very forces that funded it. But what if this idea wasn't unique to Tesla? What if Tesla was trying to rediscover a knowledge that had already been lost? Some argue that star forts were the physical infrastructure of that lost network. Certain minerals embedded within the walls, the distance of the forts from water sources, the orientation of the structures. All of these align with the conditions a power station would require. Now let's address the question: why would official history hide this? It's a very natural question to ask, and the answer is actually hidden in other historical examples. In many parts of the world, there is a strange layer buried beneath the soil, one that, Mudflood, researchers have been pointing to for a long time. Buildings, streets, entire cities, buried as if they sank into the ground overnight. New structures were built right on top of them, and the old layer was simply ignored. If a great civilization was truly wiped out by such a reset event, then those who survived, or the forces that reorganized afterward, had to reinterpret these structures. The power stations no longer worked, the grid was severed, the people who understood the technology were gone. The massive structures that remained were repurposed: defensive fortresses, churches, palaces. And that new narrative became the foundation of official history. Think about it this way: if a civilization thousands of years from now found the Empire State Building in New York collapsed and abandoned, without knowing it was a building powered by electricity, what would they think? Perhaps a temple, perhaps a fortress, perhaps the palace of a powerful ruler. When function is lost, interpretation begins. And interpretation, more often than not, buries the truth. And that is exactly what is happening right now. The story of star forts is exactly this. These structures, built thousands of years ago, may be the nodes of a global energy network, parts of a system that harness frequency, vibration, and the Earth's natural electromagnetic power to provide free, unlimited energy to humanity. A reset collapsed this system, the knowledge was lost, and the structures were stripped of their meaning and given a new identity: defensive fortresses. But the geometry is still there. The fractal patterns are still in place. The geographic locations still align with laid lines. And these structures, scattered across every corner of the world, are still speaking the same language. Perhaps the real question we should be asking isn't, why are these fortresses so complex? The real question is, when did we forget what they actually were? Time will reveal the truth.